portable diaper changing pad tutorial. Here we go. Everything you need to make this pattern is available on my Etsy shop. The list of materials, that pattern, the tutorial, illustrations, everything you need is there. So go check that out. In this pattern, I'm using two-sided fusible padding Pelon Flex foam. It's 1/8 of an inch wide, thick, but you can use single sided fusible foam padding as well. Wow, that's hard to say. Anyways, so this particular fabric was also very narrow. You can, if it's wider, put it on the fold, cut two at once, but this one was a little bit on the narrow side. So I had to lay it out flat, cut two separate pieces, but whatever, we made it work. Go ahead and cut along that dotted line to cut those wings off. This will help you save a little bit of space while you're cutting out that padding. Here I'm showing you it's 1/8 of an inch thick and it might roll up a little bit, so I used a hammer to help hold that down while I was cutting. It made it a little bit easier. You can also get away with not pinning all the way through the fabric. You can just pin to that top layer. That makes it pretty easy. Don't forget, mark your notches. That's more important for that single-sided fusible padding, but as you see here, I'm matching up that notch, sewing from that notch down and then going back to the top and sewing from the top down using a wide zigzag stitch. I'm staring at the center line, making sure that it's stitching through both sides of the padding to really connect each piece. You do that to the other side as well. Now you are going to pin one layer of your fabric to whichever side you want, flip it over, lay your other fabric on top. Again, you can use contrasting fabric here, that might be fun. And then you just follow the instructions on your padding. I think it was like 10 seconds. Hold your iron for 10 seconds. Careful, it's hot. Hold your iron down for 10 seconds to really adhere the foam to the fabric. You can flip it over and do another 10 seconds all over. This part takes a little while just because you're kind of moving at a snail's pace. So dance party, do what you want, listen to your audiobook. And here's where you get to take that fun marker that is my favorite tool. It's like a water-based erasable pen that when it gets wet disappears. It's so fun. When you're stitching, you're looking at that purple line. You can use tailor's chalk, but I would recommend using something that you can look at while you're sewing to really focus on getting those nice clean lines. And since it's a disappearing ink, I really only did a couple lines at a time before I went through and did I probably did like 3 or 4 lines at a time, and then I'd go back and draw more, go back and draw more. So anyways, here's where we get to the fun part of your bias tape. Fold those pieces in. This is just one way to do this. Fold those pieces in, fold it over, sandwich them inside, and then they look nice and finished. There are a bunch of, different ways to do that, but this is the way I wanted to do it. When you get to the corners, lift the foot up, hand crank slowly till you get to the edge, lift the foot again, you do another hand turn, and then you carry on. And then you get a nice little finished tab that looks really profesh, looks great. And give it a nice press afterwards, because that always makes things look really nice after you finish sewing them. So yeah, you just, in the seam allowance, kind of reinforce it back and forth a few times to really get it connected. And then you take the remainder bias tape that you have, open it up so the raw edge is on the seam allowance and the bulk of your bias tape is inside, if that makes sense. I think you can see this easier than I can explain it. And I'm kind of just going through, again, not pinning all the way through my padding, just that top layer, and folding over the end points to give it a nice clean finish. You can kind of see that fold over. So when I get to my sewing machine, I can just stitch over that and it looks really nice once it's done. The first time I did this, I did 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I would recommend going 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So if you're looking closely at this, you can still see that 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. It just wasn't enough. Once I rolled the bias tape back over, I realized I really needed to have 1/4 of an inch seam allowance here. So yeah, learn from my mistake there, 1/4 of an inch. And then fold your bias tape twice to encase your seam allowance inside and pin as much as you need to. The more pins, the merrier. I liked to kind of use my finger to push down any bulky spots, and then areas that were just there was too much fabric, I decided I would trim it down just a smidge, just like a tiny, tiny little bit. And I continued pinning. There's so many pins in this project, so be careful while you're sewing. Don't wear sweaters that have big holes. I can't even tell you how many needles I've found in my sweaters after I'm done sewing a project like this. So side tip, don't wear sweaters when you're sewing. Anyways, back to the tutorial. You might have to take those corners really slowly. I like to use a pin to kind of push that bulk down as I'm stitching and taking it really slow, doing a lot of lifting and lowering of that presser foot really helped me while I was working on this to create a nice clean finish with that bias tape. And when you get to the end of all of that bias tape, you can press everything, use a lot of steam here, that helps, and kind of pre-fold everything to give it a nice, clean, crisp fold line, kind of that Pellon Flex foam. When you fold it and press it with a lot of steam, that gives it kind of like a memory, which is great when you're on the go and you just want to fold it up really fast, and it gives it kind of like that nice finished look. And then you go ahead and mark where you're going to put your either Velcro or your snaps. Here you see me just hand sewing those snaps into place. I only stitched through that first top layer. I didn't want the needle to go all the way through. If it's easier for you to stitch all the way through, go for it. But I don't know, I just didn't want to see the stitching on the other side, so I only stitched through one layer. But that being said, I did stitch through both sides when I made the Velcro version. So whatever, do what you want. And yeah, do the snaps or Velcro to both sides. Don't forget the other snap. And yeah, you've just made the most adorable handmade portable diaper changing pad. It fits perfectly inside of a diaper bag, specifically that one from Target that like every mom has. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Stay tuned and happy sewing, everyone.